I want to talk about the Michael Flynn case, especially the actions of Judge Sullivan. And the way I want to begin is with, I guess, what you could call a parable. Now, let me outline the parable. Let's assume there's a white woman, and after work, she goes to dinner and has a few drinks with one of her colleagues at work. And they're two young people, and they flirt a lot at work. I mean, this happens quite often. But that particular night, things they get carried away. They have maybe a few too many drinks. Afterwards, she goes home with the guy. They listen to some music. They have some more to drink. And ultimately, they end up in bed and have sex. She goes home. It's very late. She assumes that her husband's, or at least hopes that her husband's asleep. She takes off her shoes. She quietly opens the door and she starts coming into the house. And to her surprise, there's her husband sitting on the couch. He's been waiting up for her because he's worried and he hadn't been able to get through to her on the cell phone, which she had turned off. And he looks at her, and she looks totally disheveled. Her makeup's a mess, her hair's a mess, the foreplay had gotten rough, and her dress is actually torn around the collar. And he says, "My God, where have you been? What did you do?" And the woman in a panic starts to cry and says she was raped. And as so often happens, in American society, when he says, who raped you? And she says, two black guys. Two black guys. So he calls the police, and the police come, and they do all the things that they do in such cases. And she sticks to her story that she was raped by two black men. She tells them where. Let's just call the area of the city Area A. She was raped by two young black men in Area A. And she gives, physical descriptions, which are kind of, generic. Oh, they were, in their mid-20s, and they had black hoodies on, and all that stuff. And so the police start looking at their video camera footage, closed-circuit TV camera footage. And sure enough, in that area of the city, Area A, they see there's this guy who fits the description. He's a young black male. He's in his mid-20s. He's got a dark hoodie on. So they bring him in for questioning, and he's kind of elusive about what he was doing. He doesn't give straight answers. So they figure they got their man, and they arrest him. She comes down. She has to pick somebody out of a lineup, and she picks this guy because they got him standing there with his black hoodie on, and he's the only guy with a black hoodie. Now, none of this is, of course, very far-fetched if you know anything about sometimes how the American legal system works. So they take the guy, and the prosecution begins. He doesn't have a lot of money. Him and his brother live with their single mom who's ill. She's not very healthy, and they pretty much take care of her. She can't take care of herself. So he gets a public defendant who's semi-competent at best. And the guy doesn't do a very good job. The police turn over all the evidence that they managed to get, which makes the guy look guilty. But they don't turn over much of the evidence that makes him look not guilty. For example, they know that he was indeed in Area A, but that the woman, they can't find any evidence of her being in Area A, and checking credit card things and closed-circuit TV cameras and other areas. They find out that she was in Area C all that night and was seen leaving a bar with a guy. But, the prosecutors just go ahead, and they got this guy, and eventually they offer him a plea deal. Now, again, only armed with the evidence that makes him look bad, but not giving him access, or his lawyer, the evidence that would exculpate him, they offered the guy a deal. They said, look, she claims she was raped by two black men. If you plead guilty we'll give you a somewhat reduced sentence. If you don't plead guilty, you'll get a bigger sentence, and we're gonna arrest your brother because he was in that same area too, and he may be the second black man, and this is his younger brother. Now the guy's in this dilemma because if first off, he knows he didn't do it. He knows he didn't rape this woman. He knows his brother didn't do it. But he knows that if him and his brother go to jail, then the poor mother who can't take care of herself, what's going to happen to mom? So he decides he'll plead guilty. That's the best course for him to pursue. Keep his brother out of jail, and then his brother can look after mom. So that's what he does. He pleads guilty. Now, in the meantime, the DA is replaced. A new DA comes in. And one of those outfits that run out of law schools where they try to help poor, especially minority poor people who look like they might have been railroaded, starts looking into the case as one of their student projects. And they know what they're doing. They work for good lawyers, and they demand all the evidence in this case. And when they get all the evidence, it looks pretty clear that this woman wasn't even in the area where he was to have been raped. And there's no evidence of any strange behavior on his part that would have looked like, he was about to or had committed a rape. And the brother wasn't there at all. And they know that they threatened the brother. So the new DA decides they're just going to drop the case. This is ridiculous. And they tell the woman and her lawyer that they know she wasn't in that area. And, and she just says, well, just drop it too, because she doesn't want to get into it with her husband about what really happened. And the whole thing is just going to disappear. Now, the problem is this guy has been appearing before a judge. And this judge takes a hard position against African-American people brought before him. I mean, it's not that there's a claim that he's racist, but he's particularly hard on African-Americans. In fact, he had said in the press earlier about this case that, rapists are usually serial rapists, and he had actually made a remark that probably this guy had committed other rapes. When in fact, he hadn't even committed this rape, let alone several rapes. So you can say that this guy has a bias against the defendant. So when all this is presented to him, that the DA doesn't want to pursue this anymore and they just want the case dropped, he decides he doesn't want to do that. This guy's already pled guilty. He wants to he likes seeing black men go to jail. Who knows? So he refuses to dismiss the case. In fact, he starts threatening the defendant with a contempt perjury charge in the court. Because after all, the guy had indeed lied to the judge when he pled guilty. Now, of course, the reason he pled guilty was, the whole system was rigged against him. There was, information was being withheld from his lawyer. His lawyer wasn't particularly competent, and they were threatening his brother. But the judge is persistent. And he says, no, we're going to look into this, and I don't understand, why these charges are being dropped. And if you didn't commit it, then why did you commit perjury and say that you were guilty before me? So you're guilty of perjury, and maybe we should get you for that. Now, if you just look at this case, you say, well, this is a travesty of justice. This is total foobar. But that's exactly what's going on in the Flynn case. I mean, General Flynn, pled guilty. They were threatening, if he didn't, they were threatening his son. They had already ruined him. They had ruined his family because of all his legal expenses. And they withheld all the evidence that they had that would have made him look less guilty or not guilty from his defense team. And it was only his new lawyer who had gotten it out and ferreted it out. And of course, you had somebody new at the Justice Department. And now we have Judge Sullivan saying, well, you pled guilty before me, under oath. So ergo, you lied. You committed perjury. I should hold you in contempt. And I'm not going to, drop this case. And that's what's happening. And it is, just as in the case I used as an example, it's a travesty of justice. And if you take out the politics of this, you take out the fact that, Michael Flynn was in the Trump administration, and Michael Flynn had bad relationship with the Obama administration, which led him to be removed as head of the DIA. And you take all that out of it, and you look at it as a much more simple case, if you will, a black and white case. I mean, you can see that it's a travesty. I mean, nobody in their right mind would want to see, I shouldn't say that. Most people in their right mind wouldn't want to see an African-American man railroaded and charged with contempt for having been led by bad lawyers and bad prosecutors to plead guilty to keep his brother out of jail so he could take care of their mom. I mean, it's just unthinkable. I'm sure it happens, but, if you know that it's happening, and all the facts are laid out before you. I mean, the idea then to go after this guy for perjury, contempt, is absurd. But as I said, that's what's going on with the Michael Flynn case. It is really that simple. You see people on TV all the time want to make it seem more complex or tricky, but that's it. If you plead guilty because you're being railroaded, and you don't want to be sent too far down the railroad, are you guilty of perjury? Are you guilty of contempt of court? Not in my mind. And, you obviously can make up your own minds. If you like this video and some of my other videos, please subscribe, hit the, give me a thumbs up, a like, hit the notification button so you know when I release new videos, and please leave a comment. And until the next video, I'm out of here.